are religious and have deep beliefs in their religion. And I think that's great. And I'm not going to come up in here, for example, and argue that God doesn't exist and give you a list of reasons why God doesn't exist. Because, you know that he does, right? She does, excuse me. You know that she does. And frankly, we shouldn't be having that debate. Let the scientists do their science and let whichever religion it is you belong to do whatever it does. Have your faith, enjoy it, cherish it, but let us scientists do our work and have our fights and have our arguments and let our children learn the best science. Thank you.
All right, this is about vestigial organs. It says male nipples, which include the milk-making mammary tissues as women, but men don't make milk. Explain their function if they're not vestigial.
Explain the function of nipples on men if they're not vestigial. Is that the question? First place, I would point out that if there were a vestigial structure, that is lousy evidence for evolution. That's an example of losing something, not gaining something. Evolution ought to have some examples where we gain something. So your question was, why isn't this example of evolution? Was that what was the question there? Okay, so I am answering the question, thank you. Now, as far as the function, there's quite a few different types of skin on the human body. Ask anybody who ever does skin grafting for burn victims. They will tell you there are different types of skin, and they have to be you have to graft carefully to get the right type of skin in the right place, okay? Or you may have problems where it won't take, even from the same body, transplanting from one part of your body to another for skin grafting. There are several different types of skin that end right where the nipples are on anybody's body. Several different types of skin. The skin on the side of your body is different than the skin on the front of your body, the chest. So I don't know all the functions of it or the purposes of it, but I think that I would point out that that question shows enormous faith in evolution, totally devoid of facts, because that is not evidence for evolution. Vestigial organs would not count as evidence. It is simply and it's not vestigial, by the way. Nearly all male mammals have these things, and whether they serve a function for transition from one type of skin to another, or for probably several things, several other purposes have been proposed. I won't get into all that now, but I think that there probably are reasons for it. But I think if you look at this historically, 200 years ago, scientists had a list of nearly 180 vestigial organs. They said you don't need your appendix, you don't need your tonsils, you don't need your adenoids, you don't need your pituitary gland, you don't need your thyroid gland, you don't need your thymus gland. They had 180 vestigial organs on the list. And that was supposed to be evidence for evolution. One by one, those things get plucked off the list as we realize the function of that, okay? So I would state my case and say that even if we don't know all of the functions of a particular organ or design, then that still is not evidence for evolution. In fact, it's just indication we need to study more. There are other functions we probably should not get into, other possible purposes, we should not get into, and maybe in a college classroom we could. Okay.
Okay. And now we're going to move on to a question for Dr. Weisenberg. And the question is, how does the fossil record prove evolution, and how did the origin of life begin?
Okay, that's actually two questions. Okay, two questions, and I'm going to answer the following way. First of all, fossils don't prove evolution, okay? The fossil record is consistent with a story, a historical pattern, right? And that's exactly what paleontologists work at. They try and place the fossils in order according to the kinds of data that they accumulate, which involve a variety of kinds of evidence: geological evidence, chemical evidence, physical evidence. And you will see, because I follow this, they fight. Boy, do they fight. They fight bitterly over exactly where this fossil should go or that fossil should go, over exactly the kinds of transitions, right? Because that's what scientists do, okay? But always, because evolution has reached such a high level of reliability in that wherever you see that argument, you don't see somebody coming in and say, oh, this particular fossil is inconsistent with evolution, because that just doesn't happen. That just hasn't happened and therefore it's not an issue, okay? Secondly, about the second question, because there was two questions. When I teach this, I don't even talk about, I may mention origin of life once or twice. My textbook has a half a page on the origin of life. It's a big mystery. I wish I knew. There are several theories about the processes that might have, sometimes called chemical evolution, whether it's thermal vents or clays or RNA organisms. We don't know. I guess I don't think we're ever going to know for sure, because I don't think we're going to have a time machine to go back and look, and the traces of what happened 3.5 billion years ago are simply gone. Science deals with the world of real evidence, and we just never going to know. Okay, but that's separate from the issue of. I tell my students this. I've done this in my class, my beginning class, non-majors. I say, look, if you want to believe in creation, fine. Believe in the creation of the first living cell. And I have no problem with that. Because scientifically, I don't have anything really better scientifically. I don't happen to believe that. But I'll accept, if you want to argue, say, hey, it was created, the first living thing was an act of divine creation. As long as you accept the facts, as I understand them, from all the various scientific studies 3.5 billion years ago, and the transitions that happened afterwards, fine. That's no problem for me as a scientist.
And this person says, I'm still waiting for physical evidence and verifiable facts that your God exists, aside from the Bible, which humans wrote.
If I understand the question correctly, you're asking for verifiable evidence that my God exists. I think that design demands a designer. If I was walking through the woods and found a painting hanging on a tree, and I looked around and could find no evidence of a human ever having been there, no footprints, no evidence at all, I would still conclude there was a painter. If I was walking through the beach, along the beach, and I found, John loves Mary written in the sand, I would never dream that the waves did that. I would assume that because these sand molecules or grains are arranged in a particular order, they are designed to give a message. So I would conclude that there was some level of intelligence here that created this. Now, that would depend on how intelligent Mary and John are, but there's some level of intelligence here. Design always demands a designer. A painting testifies there was a painter, whether you ever see him or not. A building is proof there was a builder. When we dig through the ground and we find evidence of an ancient civilization, if you start in archaeology, you're digging down in the ground and you find some stones arranged in a circle. They conclude somebody did it. Because this is obvious, it doesn't happen as a natural thing. And the archaeologists look at this all the time, and they see evidence in the ground for a human designer. Why we can't look at the world we see through the microscope or the telescope or our eyeballs and see that there is a designer, the evidence is shouting at us. The watch is proof there was a watchmaker. Now, some people don't like that idea because if there's a designer, then there might be some rules. And that's really what they're running from. Creation itself is evidence of a creator. I don't have to see the watchmaker to believe he exists. When I was in Japan a year ago, I did not get to see the guy who made the Casio Databank watch. But I believe there was one. I never saw the guy who designed this. As far as I know, this is the world's largest rock group. But you can